A single father missed the most important job interview of his life to help a crying child find her mother in a crowded mall. What he didn't know was that the child's mother owned the very company he was supposed to interview with. And when the nanny revealed what she had witnessed, everything changed in ways no one could have imagined. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The underground parking garage of Meridian Shopping Center hummed with a constant flow of cars searching for spaces. Fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows between concrete pillars, and the air carried the scent of exhaust and dampness. In this maze of vehicles and echoing footsteps, desperation had many faces, but none quite like David Chen's as he sat in his 15-year-old Honda Civic staring at his phone screen. The interview confirmation email glowed back at him. Pinnacle Marketing Solutions. Senior graphic designer position. Salary that would change everything for him and his 8-year-old son Tommy. After 18 months of unemployment, countless rejections, and nights spent choosing between groceries and utilities, this was his chance. His only chance. David's hands trembled slightly as he adjusted his tie in the rearview mirror. The navy blue suit was borrowed from his neighbor. A little loose in the shoulders but presentable. His portfolio sat beside him, meticulously organized, containing years of work that he hoped would speak louder than his current circumstances. He had practiced his answers, researched the company until he knew their client roster by heart, and even managed to get a haircut with the last $20 in his wallet. The clock on his dashboard read 2:47 p.m. His interview was at 3 p.m. sharp. 13 minutes to find parking, navigate through the mall to the business complex on the other side, and somehow transform from a desperate father into a confident professional. He had planned this perfectly, arriving early to account for traffic, but the parking garage was completely full. As David circled the third level for the second time, his phone buzzed with a text from Tommy. "Dad, good luck today. I know you'll get it. Love you." The message was accompanied by a hand-drawn picture of a man in a suit with a big smile and the words "World's Best Dad" written in crayon. David's chest tightened. Tommy didn't know how bad things had gotten. Didn't know that they were 3 weeks behind on rent, that the eviction notice was hidden in David's desk drawer, or that his father had been surviving on coffee and determination for the past 2 days so Tommy could have proper meals. The boy believed his dad was just between jobs, a phrase David had used to shield him from the harsh reality of their situation. Finally, a car pulled out from a spot near the elevator. David quickly maneuvered into the space, grabbed his portfolio, and ran toward the exit. His dress shoes, polished until they gleamed despite their age, clicked against the concrete as he moved. 9 minutes. He could still make it. The mall was bustling with afternoon shoppers. Families meandered between stores. Teenagers clustered around the food court, and the sound of children's laughter mixed with the ambient noise of commerce. David navigated through the crowd, his eyes focused on the directory sign that would point him toward the business complex. 7 minutes. That's when he heard it. A sound that cut through all the noise and stopped him in his tracks. A child crying. Not the ordinary fuss of a tired toddler, or the dramatic wail of someone denied a toy. This was different. This was fear. David turned toward the sound and saw her. A little girl, maybe 5 years old, standing alone near the fountain in the center court. She wore a pink dress with white flowers, her dark hair and neat pigtails tied with matching ribbons. But her face was streaked with tears, and her small body shook with each sob. She clutched a stuffed elephant to her chest and kept turning in circles, clearly looking for someone who wasn't there. David's first instinct was to keep walking. Someone else would help. Security would handle it. He had exactly 6 minutes to get to the most important interview of his life. 6 minutes to change everything for him and Tommy. But as he took another step toward the business complex, the little girl's crying grew louder, more desperate, and he couldn't ignore the way his heart clenched at the sound. He stopped walking, turned around, and approached the child. "Hey there," David said softly, crouching down to her level so he wouldn't seem intimidating. "Are you okay? Are you lost?" The little girl looked up at him with wide, tear-filled brown eyes. She nodded, but didn't speak, just hugged her elephant tighter. "What's your name, sweetheart?" David asked gently. "Emma," she whispered, her voice barely audible over her sniffles. "That's a beautiful name, Emma." "I'm David. Can you tell me who you're looking for?" "My mama," Emma said, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "I can't find my mama. We were in the toy store, and I saw a princess dress in another store, and I just wanted to look. But now I can't find her, and I'm scared." David glanced at his phone. 4 minutes. The rational part of his mind screamed at him to flag down security and keep moving. But looking at Emma's frightened face, he knew he couldn't leave her. Not like this. Not when she needed help. "Okay, Emma, we're gonna find your mama, all right? But I need you to help me. Do you remember what store you were in with her?" Emma pointed toward the east wing of the mall. "The one with all the toys. With the big teddy bear in the window." David knew the store. It was in the opposite direction from his interview. His phone buzzed with a reminder notification. Interview in 3 minutes. He stared at the screen for a moment, then put the phone in his pocket without reading any more notifications. "Come on, Emma. Let's go find your mama, but you have to stay right next to me, okay? Hold my hand so we don't get separated, too." Emma slipped her small hand into his, and they began walking toward the toy store. David's mind raced as they moved through the crowd. He could still call to reschedule. Explain the situation. Surely they would understand. But he knew better. In today's job market, there were dozens of qualified candidates. Missing an interview, regardless of the reason, usually meant losing the opportunity. As they walked, Emma began to calm down slightly. "Are you a daddy?" she asked, looking up at David. "Yes, I am. I have a little boy named Tommy. He's 8. "Is he nice?" "Very nice, and very smart. He drew me a picture today to wish me luck." "Luck for what?" David hesitated. "For something important I was supposed to do today." They reached the toy store, and David approached the first employee he saw. "Excuse me, I found this little girl. She's looking for her mother." They were here together, and Emma wandered off. The employee, a young woman with bright blue hair, immediately looked concerned. "Oh no. Let me call our manager." She picked up a walkie-talkie. "Code Adam. Code Adam. We have a lost child situation." Within minutes, the store was buzzing with activity. Employees began searching the aisles, and the manager appeared with a clipboard and a serious expression. David explained the situation while Emma clung to his hand. "We need to check our security footage," the manager said, "and I'll need to call mall security to make an announcement. Can you stay with her until we locate the mother?" David looked at his phone. His interview had officially started. He could picture the receptionist calling his name to an empty waiting room, the hiring manager checking his watch and making a note in David's file. Candidate failed to appear. But Emma was still holding his hand, and she was looking up at him with complete trust. "Of course," David said. "I'll stay with her." The next hour passed in a blur of security announcements, worried store employees, and Emma gradually becoming more comfortable with David. She told him about her elephant, whose name was Peanuts, and about how her mama was the best. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. Mama in the world. Because she took her for ice cream every Friday and read her 3 stories before bed, David found himself genuinely enjoying Emma's chatter, even as his phone continued to buzz with missed calls from Pinnacle Marketing Solutions. Each vibration felt like another door closing, another opportunity slipping away. But every time he looked at Emma's face, he knew he had made the right choice. Finally, the mall security officer's radio crackled to life. "We found her. The mother is in the administrative office. She's been looking everywhere." The relief on Emma's face was immediate and profound. "Mama! We found Mama!" They were escorted through the mall's back corridors to the security office, Emma practically bouncing with excitement. David's heart was heavy with the weight of what he had sacrificed, but seeing Emma's joy made it bearable. The security office door opened, and a woman rushed out. She was elegantly dressed in a tailored black suit, her dark hair pulled back in a professional chignon. Despite the worry etched on her face, there was an unmistakable air of authority about her. She moved with the confidence of someone accustomed to being in charge. "Emma! Oh my God, Emma!" The woman dropped to her knees and pulled her daughter into her arms. "I was so scared. I've been looking everywhere for you." "Mama, this is David," Emma said, pulling back from the hug. "He helped me find you. He's really nice. And he has a little boy named Tommy, and he stayed with me the whole time, even though he had something really important to do." The woman looked up at David, her eyes still bright with tears of relief. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you so much. I can't even begin to express how grateful I am." "It's no problem at all," David said. "I'm just glad she's safe." The woman stood, extending her hand to David. "I'm Victoria Blackwood, and I owe you more than I can ever repay." David shook her hand, noting the firm grip and the way she made direct eye contact. "David Chen." Really, anyone would have done the same thing. "No," Victoria said firmly. "Not everyone would have stayed. Not everyone would have missed something important to help a stranger's child. Emma told me you had somewhere important to be." David shrugged, trying to downplay his sacrifice. It wasn't that important. But Victoria was studying his face, and something in her expression suggested she wasn't buying his casual dismissal. "What was it? Where were you supposed to be?" David hesitated. There was no point in lying, but he also didn't want to make Victoria feel guilty about something that had been his choice. "I had a job interview," he said finally. "But Emma needed help, so the interview could wait." "A job interview?" Victoria's eyebrows rose. "Where?" "Pinnacle Marketing Solutions. But really, it's fine. These things happen." Victoria went very still. David noticed the change immediately, but couldn't interpret what it meant. Emma was tugging on her mother's hand, chattering about peanuts and how David had bought her a juice box from the vending machine while they waited. "Pinnacle Marketing Solutions," Victoria repeated slowly. "What position?" "Senior graphic designer. But listen, I should probably head home. My son will be wondering where I am." Victoria's expression had shifted into something David couldn't read. She looked almost stunned. "David Chen," she said quietly, for the 3 o'clock interview slot. Now it was David's turn to look surprised. "How did you know that?" Victoria was quiet for a long moment, her gaze moving from David to Emma and back again. "Because," she said finally, "I'm Victoria Blackwood. I own Pinnacle Marketing Solutions." The words hit David like a physical blow. He felt the blood drain from his face as the full implications of what she was saying sank in. The woman whose daughter he had helped, whose hand he was still shaking, was the CEO of the company where he had just missed the most important interview of his life. I don't understand," David stammered. "I was supposed to be in that interview." Victoria continued, "I make it a point to personally interview candidates for senior positions. When you didn't show up, I assumed you had found another opportunity or simply changed your mind. It happens more often than you'd think." David felt like the ground was shifting beneath his feet. "Mrs. Blackwood, I can explain." "You don't need to explain anything," Victoria said. "You've already shown me everything I need to know about your character." Emma, sensing that the adults were having an important conversation, had grown quiet. She looked between David and her mother with curious eyes. "David," Victoria said, "would you be available to come to my office tomorrow morning? Say, 9 o'clock. David nodded numbly. "Yes, of course. I'll be there." "Good." Victoria reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. "My direct number is on there." "And David? Thank you again. What you did today. It means more to me than you could possibly know." As they parted ways in the parking garage, David sat in his car for a long time, trying to process what had just happened. He had given up the job interview of a lifetime to help a lost child, only to discover that the child belonged to the very person who could give him that job. But something about Victoria's demeanor suggested that tomorrow's meeting wasn't guaranteed to be positive. He had missed the interview, after all. Maybe she was just being polite. Maybe she felt obligated to give him a chance because he had helped Emma. David drove home through the evening traffic, his mind spinning with possibilities and doubts. When he arrived at his apartment, Tommy was waiting with homework spread across the kitchen table and a hopeful expression on his face. "How did it go, Dad? Did you get the job?" David sat down across from his son, looking at the eager face that depended on him for everything. "It's complicated, buddy. But I'll know more tomorrow." That night, after Tommy was asleep, David sat at his kitchen table reviewing his portfolio one more time. His phone rang and he glanced at the caller ID, expecting to see a familiar number. Instead, it showed V. Blackwood. David answered on the second ring. "Hello?" "David, it's Victoria Blackwood. I hope I'm not calling too late." "Not at all. Is everything okay? Is Emma all right?" "Emma is fine. She's been talking about you all evening. She wanted me to tell you that Peanuts says thank you, too." Victoria's voice carried a warmth that hadn't been there in the mall. "But that's not why I'm calling." David waited, his heart pounding. "I wanted you to know that I spent some time reviewing your portfolio this evening. The pieces you submitted with your application are exceptional. Your work on the Henderson campaign was particularly impressive." "Thank you," David said, not sure where this was leading. "I also want you to know that tomorrow morning isn't an interview," Victoria continued. "It's an orientation. If you want the job, it's yours." David felt like he couldn't breathe. Are you serious?" "Completely serious. David, what you did today showed me more about your character than any interview could. You put the well-being of a frightened child above your own needs, even when those needs were critical. That's the kind of person I want working for my company." "Mrs. Blackwood, I don't know what to say. Say you'll be there at 9. "I'll be there," David managed. "Good. And David? Bring Tommy with you tomorrow. Emma has been asking if she can meet him." After Victoria hung up, David sat in the quiet kitchen, staring at his phone. In the span of a few hours, he had gone from missing the most important opportunity of his life to being offered the job without even interviewing. It felt surreal, like something that happened to other people in feel-good movies, not to struggling single fathers in real life. But as he went to bed that night, David realized that Victoria Blackwood was right about one thing. Character mattered. And sometimes, doing the right thing for the right reasons led to outcomes that no amount of planning could achieve. The next morning dawned bright and clear. David, dressed carefully in the same borrowed suit, but this time his hands weren't shaking as he adjusted his tie. Tommy sat on the bed, wearing his best clothes and practically vibrating with excitement about meeting Emma. "Tell me again why I get to come with you to work," Tommy said, bouncing slightly. "Because," David said, smoothing down his son's cowlick, "sometimes when you help people, good things happen. And the little girl I helped yesterday wants to meet you." "Is her mom really going to give you a job?" "It looks that way." Tommy grinned. "This is the best day ever." They arrived at Pinnacle Marketing Solutions 15 minutes early. The building was sleek and modern, all glass and steel reaching toward the sky. In the lobby, contemporary art hung on pristine white walls, and the receptionist sat behind a curved desk that looked like it cost more than David's car. David chinned to see Victoria Blackwood. David said, his voice steady despite his nerves. "Of course, Mr. Chen. Please take the elevator to the 20th floor. Mrs. Blackwood is expecting you." As they rode the elevator up, David found himself thinking about the chain of events that had led them here. If he hadn't heard Emma crying, if he had chosen to keep walking, If security had found her first, any one of a dozen different decisions could have changed everything. The elevator doors opened onto a reception area that was even more impressive than the lobby. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, and the furniture looked like it belonged in a design magazine. "Daddy, this place is fancy," Tommy whispered. Before David could respond, a familiar voice called out, "David! Tommy!" Emma came running across the reception area, her pigtails bouncing and peanuts tucked under her arm. Behind her, Victoria walked with measured steps, but her face wore a genuine smile. "Emma, what do we say about running in the office?" Victoria said gently. "Sorry, Mama." Emma stopped in front of Tommy and David, suddenly shy. "Hi, Tommy. I'm Emma. This is Peanuts." Tommy, who had been nervous about meeting new people, found himself smiling at Emma's earnest introduction. "Hi, Emma. Peanuts is really cool. Do you want to see my mama's office? It has a really big window, and you can see the whole city." "Can I, Dad?" David looked at Victoria, who nodded. "Go ahead. I'll show you both around." Victoria's office was indeed impressive. The view was spectacular, and her desk was organized with the precision of someone who valued efficiency. But what caught David's attention were the photos scattered around the room, pictures of Emma at various ages, drawings that had clearly been created by small hands, and a child-sized chair in the corner that suggested Emma spent time here regularly. "This is where Mama works," Emma explained to Tommy, climbing into the small chair. "Sometimes I come here after school, and Maria takes care of me." "Maria is Emma's nanny," Victoria explained to David. "She's been with us since Emma was a baby." As if summoned by her name, a woman appeared in the doorway. She was middle-aged with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a neat bun. She wore a simple dress and comfortable shoes, and there was something about her manner that immediately put David at ease. "Maria, I'd like you to meet David Chen and his son Tommy," Victoria said. "David is the man I told you about, the one who helped Emma yesterday." Maria's face lit up with recognition and something else, something that looked almost like relief. "Mr. Chen," she said, stepping forward with her hand extended. "I cannot tell you how grateful I am for what you did. Please call me David." And really, it was nothing. "It was not nothing," Maria said firmly. "May I speak with you privately for a moment?" Victoria looked curious but nodded. "Emma, why don't you show Tommy the art supplies in the conference room? You two can draw while the adults talk." Once the children were settled in the adjacent conference room, Maria turned to David with an expression that was both serious and emotional. "Mr. Chen, I need to tell you something about yesterday. Something Mrs. Blackwood doesn't know." David glanced at Victoria, who looked as puzzled as he felt. "I was supposed to be watching Emma," Maria continued, her voice heavy with guilt. "Mrs. Blackwood had asked me to take her shopping while she prepared for interviews. But I received a phone call from my daughter. She lives in El Salvador, and there was an emergency with my grandson. He was in the hospital." Maria paused, gathering herself. "I was so worried, so distracted by the call, that I didn't notice when Emma wandered away from the toy store. By the time I realized she was gone, I was frantic. I searched everywhere, called security, but she had simply vanished into the crowd." Victoria's face had gone pale. "Maria, why didn't you tell me this yesterday?" "Because I was ashamed," Maria said, tears forming in her eyes. "I have been taking care of children for 30 years, and I have never lost one. Not once. I was prepared to resign, to accept full responsibility for my negligence." She turned back to David. "But then, security found Emma, and she told me about the kind man who stayed with her, who bought her juice and talked to her about her elephant until I could be located. She said you missed something important to help her, and that you never made her feel scared or uncomfortable." Maria wiped her eyes with a tissue from her pocket. "Mr. Chen, you didn't just help a lost child yesterday. You saved my career, my reputation, and probably my relationship with this family. Mrs. Blackwood trusts me with the most precious thing in her world, And I nearly betrayed that trust through my own carelessness. The room was quiet for a moment. Victoria was processing this new information, and David was beginning to understand the full scope of what had happened yesterday. "Maria," Victoria said gently, "emergencies happen. Family comes first. You should have told me about your grandson immediately." "I know that now," Maria said. "But in the moment I was so worried, and then so frightened when Emma disappeared. I thought I had ruined everything." Victoria moved to her nanny and pulled her into a gentle hug. "Your grandson is okay?" "Yes, thank God. It was his appendix, but the surgery went well. He's recovering." "Good. And Maria? You're not going anywhere. Emma loves you, and so do I. But next time, please tell me when there's a family emergency. We're all human." Maria nodded gratefully, then turned back to David. "Mr. Chen, I wanted you to know the full story, because what you did had ripple effects you couldn't have imagined. You didn't just help Emma. You helped all of us." As they rejoined the children in the conference room, David found himself marveling at the interconnectedness of the situation. His decision to help Emma hadn't just been about a lost child. It had protected Maria's livelihood, strengthened Victoria's trust in her employee, and ultimately led to his own opportunity. Emma and Tommy had become fast friends, working together on a drawing that appeared to show 4 stick figures standing in front of a very tall building. "That's you and Tommy, and me and Mama," Emma explained to David, pointing to each figure. "And that's Mama's building where you're going to work now." Victoria smiled at the drawing, then looked at David. "Speaking of which, should we make this official?" The next hour was spent in Victoria's office, going over the details of David's employment. The salary was even better than he had hoped. The benefits were comprehensive, and Victoria explained that the company had a flexible policy that would allow him to work from home when Tommy was sick or had school events. "We believe in work-life balance here," Victoria said, "especially for parents. Emma and I understand the challenges of balancing career and family." "What about Emma's father?" David asked, then immediately regretted the personal question. "I'm sorry, that's none of my business." Victoria's expression grew somewhat distant. "Emma's father isn't in the picture. He decided that fatherhood wasn't compatible with his lifestyle. It's been just Emma and me since she festa because I was 6 months old." David nodded, recognizing the familiar pain of abandonment. "Tommy's mother left when he was 2. She said motherhood wasn't what she expected." "Then you understand," Victoria said. "It's not easy, but it's worth it. Definitely worth it." As they finished the paperwork, Victoria's assistant knocked on the door. "Mrs. Blackwood? Your 2 o'clock appointment is here." Victoria glanced at her watch. "Already? Time flies when you're having productive conversations." She turned to David. "Why don't you and Tommy join Emma and me for lunch? There's a great place downstairs, and I'd like to hear more about your background and ideas for the Henderson project." Lunch was relaxed and comfortable. Emma and Tommy chatted like old friends, while David and Victoria discovered they had similar philosophies about both parenting and business. Victoria was impressed by David's insights into current marketing trends, and David was struck by her thoughtful approach to leadership. "I don't believe in ruling through fear," Victoria explained as they shared dessert. "I've found that people do their best work when they feel valued and supported. When they know their employer sees them as human beings with lives and responsibilities outside the office." "That's refreshing," David said. "My last position was with a company that seemed to think employees should be grateful for any job, regardless of how they were treated." "What happened there?" David hesitated, then decided honesty was the best approach. "The company was bought out by a larger firm. They eliminated my entire department to cut costs. 18 months later, they hired a consulting firm to handle the work we used to do in-house, probably at twice the cost." Victoria shook her head. "Short-sighted. Good employees are an investment, not an expense." As they prepared to leave, Emma tugged on David's sleeve. "David, can Tommy come play at our house sometime? We could have a tea party with peanuts." David looked at Victoria, who smiled. "That sounds like a wonderful idea. Maybe this weekend?" "I'd like that," David said. "Tommy loves tea parties." Tommy grinned. "I do not." He does, David said with a wink at Emma. He just doesn't like to admit it. The drive home was filled with Tommy's excited chatter about his new friend and David's new job. But as they pulled into their apartment complex, David felt a familiar knot of anxiety in his stomach. The eviction notice was still in his desk drawer, and while his new job would solve their long-term problems, his first paycheck wouldn't come for 2 weeks. That evening, as David was helping Tommy with homework, his phone rang. Victoria's name appeared on the screen. "I hope I'm not calling it a bad time," Victoria said when he answered. "Not at all. Tommy's just finishing up his math homework." "Good. I wanted to discuss something with you. I know starting a new job can be financially challenging, especially when you've been unemployed for a while. Our company has a policy of providing advances to new employees who need them. No interest, just a simple payroll deduction plan." David was quiet for a moment, touched by her thoughtfulness but also embarrassed by his financial situation. "That's very generous, but I think we'll be okay." "David," Victoria said gently, "I'm not offering charity. I'm offering a standard company benefit. And frankly, after what you did for Emma, I'd be happy to make an exception to any policy if it meant helping you get settled." David thought about the eviction notice, about the nearly empty refrigerator, about the utility bill that was due in 3 days. "Actually," he said quietly, "an advance would be very helpful. Thank you. I'll have my assistant prepare the paperwork tomorrow. How much do you need?" David calculated quickly in his head. Rent, utilities, groceries, and a small buffer. 2,000 would cover everything until my first paycheck. Consider it done. And David, you don't need to feel embarrassed about needing help. We've all been there. After they hung up, David sat in his small kitchen, looking around at the modest apartment that had felt like a prison for the past few months. Tomorrow, everything would be different. He would have a job, a future, hope. Tommy appeared in the doorway, already in his pajamas. "Dad, are you happy about your new job?" "Very happy, buddy. Are we going to be okay now?" David pulled his son into a hug. "Yeah, Tommy, we're going to be more than okay." The weekend playdate at Victoria's house was a revelation. David had expected a mansion, but Victoria's home was elegant without being ostentatious. It was clearly expensive, but it felt like a home rather than a showcase. Emma's toys were scattered in the living room, children's artwork was displayed on the refrigerator, and the backyard had a swing set that had obviously seen plenty of use. "I wanted Emma to have a normal childhood," Victoria explained as they watched the children play in the garden. "Success doesn't mean anything if you lose sight of what really matters." David was beginning to understand that Victoria Blackwood was not the typical wealthy CEO. She was a mother first, a businesswoman second, and she seemed to have found a way to excel at both without sacrificing either. As the weeks passed, David settled into his new role at Pinnacle Marketing Solutions. His work was challenging and rewarding, his colleagues were supportive, and Victoria proved to be an excellent boss. She was demanding but fair, and she had a talent for bringing out the best in her employees. The friendship between Emma and Tommy continued to flourish. They had playdates several times a week, sometimes at Victoria's house, sometimes at David's apartment. Emma seemed to enjoy the novelty of David's smaller, cozier home, while Tommy was fascinated by the luxury of Victoria's place. One evening, about a month into David's new job, Victoria invited him and Tommy to dinner. It wasn't unusual for the four of them to share meals, but this time felt different. Victoria seemed nervous, and she had clearly put extra effort into the meal. After dinner, while the children played in Emma's room, Victoria and David sat on the back patio with coffee. "David," Victoria said, turning her cup in her hands, "I want to ask you something, but I'm not sure how to approach it." David felt his stomach tighten. Had he done something wrong at work? Was there a problem with his performance? "What is it?" he asked. Victoria took a deep breath. "Emma has been asking me a lot of questions lately. About families, about fathers, about why some children have daddies and others don't." David nodded. Tommy went through a similar phase after his mother left. It's natural for children to wonder about these things. "The thing is," Victoria continued, "she's also been talking about you. A lot. She tells me about the stories you read to her when she visits your apartment. about how you helped her learn to ride her bike, about how you always listen when she talks about her day. David wasn't sure where this conversation was heading, but he sensed it was important. Emma asked me yesterday if you could be her daddy, Victoria said quietly. Not in a naive, childish way, but with real hope in her voice. She said she thinks you already love her like a daddy would. David felt his breath catch. Over the past month, he had grown incredibly fond of Emma. She was bright and funny and sweet, and he did care about her deeply. But he hadn't allowed himself to think about what that might mean. She's a wonderful little girl, David said carefully. I do care about her very much. I know you do, and I know she feels the same way about you. Victoria looked out at the garden, where they could hear the children's laughter through the open window. David, I need to tell you something. What happened that day in the mall, it wasn't just about finding Emma, it was about finding hope. David waited for her to continue. I've been single for almost 5 years, Victoria said. I've dated occasionally, but I never introduced anyone to Emma. The men I met were either intimidated by my success or attracted to my money, and none of them seemed genuinely interested in being a father to my daughter. She turned to face David directly. But you're different. You cared about Emma before you knew who I was. You stayed with her, comforted her, protected her, all while sacrificing something important to yourself. And in the weeks since then, I've watched you with her. The way you remember her favorite stories, the way you celebrate her small accomplishments, the way you discipline her gently when she's testing boundaries. You parent her naturally, instinctively. David felt his heart racing. Victoria, what are you saying? I'm saying that I think Emma might be right. I think you already love her like a father would. And I'm saying that I've fallen in love with the man who would give up his dreams to help a frightened child. The words hung in the air between them. David stared at Victoria, trying to process what she had just said. I love you too, he said finally, the words coming out in a rush. I've been trying not to think about it because I didn't want to complicate things at work or with the children, but Victoria, you're amazing. You're brilliant and kind and strong, and watching you with Emma makes me fall in love with you a little more every day. Victoria smiled, and David could see tears forming in her eyes. So what do we do now? Before David could answer, they heard footsteps on the patio behind them. They turned to see Emma and Tommy standing in the doorway, hand in hand with matching mischievous grins on their faces. Were you listening to us? Victoria asked. Maybe a little, Emma said, not looking at all sorry. We heard you say love words, Tommy added helpfully. David and Victoria looked at each other and burst out laughing. Come here, you two, Victoria said, opening her arms. Both children rushed over, and suddenly David found himself in the middle of a 4-person group hug. Does this mean David can be my daddy now? Emma asked, her voice muffled against Victoria's shoulder. And does this mean Victoria can be my mama? Tommy asked, looking up at David with hopeful eyes. David looked at Victoria over the children's heads. She raised her eyebrows in a silent question, and he nodded. Well, Victoria said, I think that could be arranged. But it might take some time to make it official. We don't mind waiting, Emma said solemnly. As long as we're all together. 6 months later, in a small ceremony attended by Maria, David's neighbors, and a few close friends from work, David Chen and Victoria Blackwood became a family in every sense of the word. The man who had once missed the most important interview of his life had found something far more valuable: love, purpose, and the kind of happiness that comes from putting others before yourself. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.